Loving our time out here, Super Bowl Radio Row, Las Vegas. We're now joined by a legend, of course, former SportsCenter anchor. Now he's got a new podcast coming out with another former SportsCenter anchor and Kevin Frazier. It's Trey Wingo, and the new pod is Alternate Routes. It's a co-production with JJ Redick's 3-4 Productions. Excited about this one, Trey?
Yeah, it is. Good to be with you guys. Amazon and Wondery are putting it together. Wondery, obviously the biggest name in podcasts, and Amazon's the biggest company in the world, so we're in good shape. Just so you guys understand, the whole premise of the show is you take one moment in sports, flip it the other way, and what happens? Like, for example, what if Santonio Holmes doesn't make that catch in the back of the end zone?
I think about that every day.
Super Bowl 43. Kurt Warner, not Peyton Manning, becomes the first quarterback to win Super Bowls with two different teams. He has multiple titles. How does that change him in the terms of the greatest of all time? How does that change the Cardinals franchise? What does it do for the Steelers and Ben Roethlisberger's legacy? So basically, we take something like that and extrapolate it out as far as we can. And the craziest one we've come up with is the Bulls and the Lakers had a coin flip for the 1979 NBA draft first overall pick, which was Magic Johnson.
Yeah.
Lakers won the coin toss. Magic goes there, Showtime Lakers, all this kind of stuff. What happens if the Bulls win? Mm-hmm. What happens if Magic Johnson goes to Chicago?
Yeah.
Michael Jordan never goes to Chicago because they're not picking up high enough to get him. Artis Gilmore, whose stats, by the way, were eerily similar to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's at that time, maybe he goes on to become the highest scorer in NBA history. And in a weird way, we figured out that if that happened, Charles Barkley, not Barack Obama, would be the first African-American president.
Wow.
It makes sense. Trust me, it all makes sense. But that's the entire point of the pod.
I feel like this podcast is going to speak to a lot of Cardinal fans because we've had a lot of those moments.
Yeah.
Like, can somebody tackle James Harrison?
Exactly right.
We didn't take Lamar Jackson. Instead took Josh Rosen. There's been a lot of those instances, but I do feel like one that we can continue to feel good about, in my opinion, is Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray comes back this year off the 20
What if he plays baseball?
Yeah, it's a great question.
Exactly right.
Absolutely. Nick Bosa, is he in Arizona? But, you watch the Cardinals from afar this year. Do you have an assessment? You have a take on them? Because it felt like, listen, people were comparing them winless Browns, one of the worst teams the last 20 years. They're pretty competitive, all things considered.
All things considered, pretty competitive. The problem for them, obviously, is the division they play in is extremely competitive. The Rams have rebounded from their abyss of a year, and the 49ers are here again, and the Seahawks were competitive all year long. The hardest thing for the Cardinals is where they play.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the biggest issue for them, because every year when you look at Arizona and what they bring to the table, you have to stack it up with, okay, the whole thing is to win your division. Who are we and how do we rank in that division? And look, nobody knows anything. Let's just be honest about it. I would have bet a lot of money, maybe I did, that the Bucs might have the worst roster in football. And here they are. They won their division. They won a playoff game, and they almost took down the Lions.
Yeah.
So, we all have these theories and ideas about what's going to happen, but then it plays out, and sometimes it's just magically wonderful in the exact opposite way.
Well, when you look at the division, and it's really it's run by the head coaches there. I mean, Kyle Shanahan, he could, cement his legacy this weekend against the Chiefs, and then you got Sean McVay and what they did as far as one of the lesser talented teams, and they're back in the postseason as well. And then the shakeup in Seattle, what does that do, and what's the opportunity for Jonathan Gannon coming off his first season?
Well, it was a very competitive year for them in a really miserable year in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see what happens in Seattle because the Geno Smith story, rightfully so, was amazing previous season, not this past season. And, people are like, why did he win comeback player of the year? I'm like, you know how much harder it is to come back from sucking as opposed to being really good and have an injury and come back to being good again?
Right.
Like, that's so much harder.
Yeah.
So, and then he sort of took a step back this year. So they have questions at quarterback. Obviously, Dan Quinn is going to get another opportunity. Part of Super Bowl 51, which might be part of alternate routes. What happened if they just handed the ball off on 3rd and 1 instead of taking a 7-step drop, strip sack, and the Patriots create the greatest comeback in the history of the Super Bowl? So there are question marks in Seattle, but I think realistically you have to start with the Niners and the Rams and try and figure it out from there.
Do you feel like the Cardinals are in a position to contend next year when you think about Kyler Murray's going to have an entire offseason, and he's being paid a premium. He's getting paid $50+ million.
Correct.
They've got Trey McBride. Michael Wilson was just on with us. They've got some ascending talent. And then, oh, by the way, they could be adding Marvin Harrison Jr. in the draft.
Correct.
It does feel like in a conference where Baker Mayfield makes the semifinals.
Yep.
Like, with Kyler Murray in the fold playing good football, like, you should think to yourself, like, we could win 9 games in this conference.
Baker on his 4th team.
Right.
4th team. And, someone said to me at the beginning of the season, breakout year for Baker. And I sort of, sarcastically said, yeah, fourth time's the charm. And it turned out to right. It was a perfect marriage for him. So, yeah, look, the NFL sells optimism better than anyone. The Lions just had a chance to go to the Super Bowl. You know, they hadn't played an NFC Championship game since 1991. The only team that doesn't have optimism is the Cowboys because they find a way to spit the bit every year.
Yeah.
Every freaking year. And I know there are a lot of Cowboys fans in the Phoenix area, but my God, you win 16 home games, second longest streak in franchise history. You had the best offense at home. Your point differential was the best at home. Your turnover margin was the best at home. And you know, they never had a chance against the Packers. It was a horrific start. So, yeah, the NFL sells optimism all the time.
One of my favorite openings ever to any NFL show. It was a cold open you did on NFL Live right after the Cardinals beat the Panthers, and you just looked in the camera and you go, do not adjust your television screens. The Arizona Cardinals are hosting the NFC Championship game.
It was crazy.
There was no music. There was nothing. You just deadpanning the television.
Yeah, well, the other one, too, is like Kurt Warner said it after the game. The Cardinals are going to the Super Bowl. You know, they went through that one that year, too. Yeah, look, things can happen.
Yeah.
Like, Cleveland was a mess, and Joe Flacco saved their season of all things. So I would have said the Texans would have been terrible this year, but they got the right quarterback and they got the right head coach, and boom, there they were, and they won a playoff game.
What is your stance on Kyler Murray? How have you viewed him in now 5 seasons in the NFL?
Uneven.
Yeah.
You know, I think that obviously the injuries were a big part of it, and the previous regime did not favor him as much as Cliff had a amazing crush on him going back to his days at Allen High School.
Yeah.
It just didn't work out. And now the people are connecting the dots at Cliff's in D.C. and Cliff played with Caleb and all this kind of stuff. So I think the next 2 years are critical for Kyler Murray. This season, he has to stack them, right? It's not, don't have a Geno Smith one-off, stack them. You want to be considered one of those guys, stack them. And I think that's the thing that he's got to do.
Is it fair? I mean, he took the Cardinals to the postseason with a college head coach who now has bounced around a little bit.
Yeah.
And you had mentioned the head coaches in the division are a gauntlet. I look at somebody like Brock Purdy. I'm not diminishing what he's done.
Yeah.
But the infrastructure they've created in San Francisco.
Correct.
Maybe give Kyler Murray some time. Let's build the roster out. We've got a head coach who looks like he knows what he's doing. They're running the Shanahan offense in Arizona now.
Yep.
I mean, like, what's your take on Brock Purdy specifically? Like, is he being elevated, or is he himself doing the elevation?
Well, here's what I would say. He has an unbelievable cast around him. But when they needed him most in the NFC Championship game, in the second half, he was 13 of 16 for 190 yards, ran for 60-plus yards, and put the team on his back.
Yeah.
That's what you want your quarterback to do. And people will say, well, it was against the Lions, and they have a terrible pass defense. That's correct. So what do you want your quarterback to do against a terrible defense? Shred him.
Yeah.
Do it. And he did it. Brock is a really weird sort of standard for people. People's reactions to Brock are all over the place. One of my favorite Brock Purdy games this year was a game they lost, which was a game against the Cleveland Browns. Trent Williams got hurt in that game. Deebo Samuel got hurt in that game. It was outdoors in the rain against a really good Browns defense, which ended up being statistically the #1 defense in the NFL. And then nothing was working, and then when push came to shove in the fourth quarter, he drove them down for what should have been a game-winning field goal.
Yeah.
It was 41 yards. That's an elongated extra point in today's NFL. So this is why I say wins and losses are not a quarterback stat. Brock led the team down without one of their best players, without their best player, arguably not named Christian McCaffrey in Trent Williams, and without Deebo Samuel, and gave his team a chance to win. That's all you can ask for, especially in a game where he wasn't playing well. Guys that course correct during a game, that's a rare skill, and we've seen that happen to Brock a couple of times. He was not good against the Packers until he needed to be, and then he was great.
What about the other quarterback in this game?
Never heard of him.
Yeah, Patrick Mahomes. I mean, there's another, alternate route. Does Bruce Arians and the Cardinals, do they get up? Can they take a Mahomes? That hurts a little bit. Maybe the Bears don't trade up for Mitchell Trubisky. That'd be a fun alternate.
Well, the worst one is, who the Chiefs traded with to get to 10?
Yeah.
Buffalo.
Yeah.
Like Buffalo. And look, Josh Allen's great. Don't get me wrong. But they cannot beat this guy in the postseason, right? This was supposed to be the time. And by the way, Josh Allen wasn't the reason they lost that game. He didn't drop those passes. He didn't stop running the ball in the second half. He didn't call fake punt inside your own 35.
Oh, man.
They got bailed out because Mecole fumbled on the goal line. But Patrick Mahomes is on pace to be the greatest quarterback we've ever seen. And here's the way I say it. Look, no one's ever going to get 7 rings. It's not going to happen. So if you are a believer that rings matter more than anything, then Tom Brady's the GOAT forever. I would say Tom Brady's the GOAT forever because he has the #1 name next to his name in every statistical category that matters. Teams win games. Teams win championships. Are you situationally excellent? And Tom has been that. But now let's look at Patrick. Through their first 6 seasons, he's ahead of Tom Brady in every category. He's led his team to more regular season wins, more playoff wins, has a higher passer rating, higher completion percentage, a way better touchdown-interception ratio. And, oh, by the way, he's in his 4th Super Bowl. Tom played in 3. Tom won his first 3 Super Bowls. If Patrick Mahomes wins on Sunday, which I believe the Chiefs will, he will have equaled or surpassed Tom Brady in every category that matters through the first 6 seasons of his career. It's remarkable. Yeah. It's remarkable.
Broadcasting icon Trey Wingo, tell us where we can find the new podcast.
Yeah, it'll be on Amazon Wondery starting the first week of March. I think it launches on Wondery Plus on March 5th, and then it goes worldwide everywhere on March 12th. Alternate routes take one moment in history. What if they had thrown the ball, handed the ball to Marshawn Lynch instead of throwing it inside to Malcolm Butler in a game that was played in that was
Glendale,
Arizona.
I didn't mind that.
Think about that.
Think
about that, though, right? Because if they lose that game, that's 3 straight Super Bowls Tom Brady has lost. The Patriots would not have won a Super Bowl since Super Bowl 39. Does Bill boot out Tom earlier? Does he go to San Francisco? Does he bring Jerome Harbaugh with him? Does Pete Carroll go down as the greatest coach ever because he'd be the only coach in football history with 2 college championships and 2 Super Bowls?
Wow.
No one else can make that claim. A lot changed on one play.
Trey, thanks for the time.
You got it, man.
Looking forward to the new podcast live from Radio Row here in Las Vegas.